Hey guys, it's mcfixit here. We're going to be working on a 2011 Rav4. We're going to be working on the back brake pads. So the right and the left will both get changed out in this video. I'll go through all the tools, the supplies, and how to do this from start to finish. Here are the tools and the supplies that I used. If you're doing your front brakes, it's the NAD 1210. If you're doing the rear ones, it's NAD 1212. And I used an impact gun with a torque stick, 22 millimeter, 14 millimeter, 8 millimeter. Then I used just a regular wrench, then a torque stick wrench. I used a box cutter because they're in plastic. You may need a flathead. You may need a breaker bar if they're on too tight. Make sure to have lots of gloves and towels. You will want jack stands and a jack. .3 brake fluid. You will probably want some lubrication as well. You'll want one of these caliper compressing tools. They work really well. I also used an oil pan, then a bottle, just an old Gatorade bottle, drilled a hole in it and put some tubing in it. And that allows me to drain the brake fluid from the brake line. And I also used a block to block things off. Get some cardboard as well. Always save a piece of big cardboard. But these are the tools and supplies I used. You may have some that you use that I didn't. There's lots of ways to do this project, but this is what was helpful to me. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and make sure kind of my station is all set up. All my tools are in reachable areas. Everything you need set up. We're going to start on this back right. So this is the passenger rear, and we're going to go ahead and jack it up. But before we jack it up, I do have this brick that we do need to place under the tire. Might be hard to see. My driveway slopes this way just a little bit, so that should help catch it if it needs it. And then I have my jack right underneath here, and we got to go to a spot on the frame. So we're going to go right between these two and just start jacking this up. This is an older jack. I mean, it's as old as I am probably, but works really, really well. And because I'm using an impact gun, I am not going to break them first. I'm just going to use the impact to get it off. So you can go ahead and get this jacked all the way up to where it is off the ground. And then we'll go ahead and put the jack supports under. You may see a little bit of dripping. We had a lot of rain just a little bit ago. So right here has 2 grooves. That's where you're going to want to put that. Same thing on this side. You can see those 2 grooves right there. Then we will slowly begin to set that back down on there. So the weight is on the jack stand up there and there, but I leave it kind of taut to that. Hard to see, but there is just enough clearance to get a tire off. So go ahead and get a 21 millimeter, and we're going to go ahead and break these off. Go ahead and save your lug nuts, put them off to the side. You'll need those later. A lot of times you can hit the top of the wheel and pop that off. We'll go ahead and set that out off to the side. I do like to go ahead and grab this and go ahead and bring it under. So just help trap all the debris. You have 2 bolts, one here and one here. They're both 14 millimeter. And we'll go ahead and break those loose. Just like that. You can spin them off by hand if you'd like. And we'll save those. So once you have the 2 bolts off, go ahead and pull it off and set it up top like so, allowing you to have access to this. Sometimes you can get these off by hand. Other times you're going to need a screwdriver or something to just gently pry on it. And so they're not the worst brake pads I've ever seen. They're not in great shape though. So you can go ahead and kind of clean up some of your clips here. Get any kind of debris off. You can take these off as well, but cleaning them off does a pretty good job of just getting them where they need to be. Then these are your new brake pads. They have little things that go on little metal pieces. Then I like to just go ahead and kind of paint them lightly. And we'll go ahead and put this one on the back. And then we'll get the next one, do the same thing. Just a light paint. And this is Ultra Brake Caliper, disc brake caliper lube, and so it just helps reduce some of the noise that you get, and sometimes those do fall off. Then you can take one of your old ones, go ahead and put it in, and so this will allow us to compress the piston back in your caliper. I was doing this on my truck the last time, and so the brake calipers are much, much bigger. And then you just kind of twist clockwise until this is pretty much completely seated. You go slow, take it every couple of seconds. Don't feel like you really gotta like manhandle it. It's not gonna help anything. You can go ahead and remove that. And we'll go ahead and put that back over. A lot of times you will have to compress these right here and here, compress it back in. We'll go ahead and grab our two 14mm bolts. If you want, you can put anti-seize on these. I'm not going to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends how rusty the vehicle is. If it was a rusty vehicle, I definitely would, just to make it a little easier. I do live in the north, which means I probably should most of the time, but I'll do it next time I change brakes in this car. So just go ahead and do it by hand a little bit. Go ahead and turn it to where it can tighten down. Then it is 20 foot-pounds of torque. So go ahead and get it to 20 foot-pounds. I went ahead and did that already. And you just heard it click. That's all you're looking for. And if I remember right, this one has always been a pain in the butt because this is your brake line. And there's really no good way you can get it without stripping. So I'm gonna just guess what 20 foot-pounds of torque is. You just really don't want to over tighten it. 20 foot-pounds is not a whole lot, so don't sit there and just yank on it. I'm gonna guess that's 20. And then we need to go ahead and bleed it. If you're just doing the rear brakes and you want to bleed it, you'll start in the back right, which is the passenger, and then go to the back left, which is the driver's side in the bleeding of the brakes order. So you'll go ahead and pop the cap, bleed your brakes, and then when you get done bleeding your brakes, you go ahead and put the cap back on. And so you'll want a partner when you do this. This is your cap right here. It's actually a really good thick cap, and we'll have them pump the brakes. You're going to want to start in this one and then go from the furthest line to the shortest line. So passenger rear right, driver's rear left, and then up over here, which is the passenger side front, and then driver's side front. It is a 8mm, so you do make sure you put that on before, and then we'll stick this right over top. We'll get somebody to do this with us, and they'll compress and go 1, 2, 3, and hold. And so you want the windows down. When 3 and hold happens, you will kind of feel it. You open it up, and then the pedal will kind of go down to the floor. You do that a few times to get any of the air bubbles out. This car only has about 60,000 miles on it, so I'm not too concerned with air bubbles in this. And in fact, the brake pads weren't even the worst. They were just starting to get old. I think the front ones are worse than the back ones because they do the majority of the braking. But go ahead and get yourself somebody to help you out now. So I'm going to try to give you the best view of this, but you may not get a great view just because of how it is. And so you're going to make sure that hose is on there. And I just picked up this hose at, I think it was Home Depot or Lowe's, relatively cheap. Go ahead.
Do you want the car on?
No, I'll say it with you. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, and hold. And then you're going to go ahead and open it up and then close it. And you don't see a whole lot of air bubbles. We'll do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, and hold. And then you can see that went ahead and did it. And then we'll just close it back down. That's good. Older cars that have lots of miles, you're going to need to do this a whole lot. But with the few miles this vehicle has, it should be fine just like that. I do like to get a towel up next to it because you will get a little bit of that, and it is highly corrosive. Thank you, you're good. You want to make sure you'll clean that off. That stuff is pretty corrosive. I mean, it even is actually a good tool cleaner and glove cleaner if you want to do that. But that is good right there. I normally do make sure it's extra tight. You don't need to kill it, but just make sure you have it tightened down. And then you can go ahead and put your cap back on. The next thing I like to do is go ahead and get some brake cleaner. There's not much left in this can, and I really didn't touch it much, so I'm just gonna hit it up real quick just to get any remaining junk off of it. And that air dries, so you don't have to wipe it down. It will air dry just how it should. Then we'll go ahead and head on over to the other side. I am going to start putting the tire kind of on, but I'm not going to tighten it down till we have both sides done. So again, we're just going to put the tire on and put the lug nuts on, and then we will tighten everything down to spec once we get both sides done. So 120 foot-pounds. I am not tightening this all the way down. I am just getting it to where it is against the rim. One other thing to remember is to make sure this is where it should be on that max. And so if it's not, you will want to add more .3. You'll probably want a funnel as well to make sure it fits in there. But remember to put this on each and every time after you get done. You don't want air to get in there or any kind of moisture to get into your system, especially moisture. It can ruin your system and make it not work near as well. So we're now on the rear passenger side, and we'll go ahead and take off the lug nuts. And so that is a 21 millimeter. And just hit the top of that wheel, and it normally pounces right off just like that. We'll go ahead and get that 14 millimeter again. And get the bolts off. There's one. There's the second one. And because this car only has about 60,000 miles, like I said, these things come off nice and smooth, and they're nice and clean, which is pretty awesome. Then we will go ahead and remove the caliper and go ahead and set it up on top. And then we can go ahead and remove the brake pads. And again, these ones aren't that bad. I probably could have let these go a little longer, but that's okay. I'm changing all 4 of them out. We're gonna have nice brakes for this trip. And so we're gonna need to do the same thing. We're gonna have to get those, I think they call them something like squeal pads. These little things right here. And we'll just go ahead and take and pop those off just like so. And remember, the ones that are closer go there. So this one goes just like this. And we'll set that back off to the side. We'll go ahead and pop the other one off and do the same thing again. Perfect. And then we can go ahead and take off the cap so we can go ahead and release this back. So you'll go ahead and pop the cap, bleed your brakes, and then when you get done bleeding your brakes, you go ahead and put the cap back on. So now that that's taken off, we'll go ahead and compress the caliper. We will want one of the old pads in there. And we'll, same thing, just go ahead and spin this tool once it gets on there nicely. We'll just go ahead and spin about 1 revolution, let it wait a few seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and spray this down while I'm waiting those couple of seconds each time, just to go ahead and clean all of that up. And do be careful, do not spray this in your eyes. It will burn really bad. And I think it can also make you go blind. And then just keep going at it. A couple slow revolutions each time. Also, if there's any buildup, you can take a screwdriver to it and just be careful not to ding anything, but if there is any kind of buildup, you can also take these off as well. You gotta pop them out and you can clean them thoroughly if you'd like. Some of the kits do come with new ones, but this spraying and just that little bit of extra cleaning, I think set that one up pretty good. Just a few more times and this one's ready to go. You can also work on kind of compressing these as well, because you'll need to do that later. So we'll go ahead and get our brake pads on. And I don't know if I mentioned on the other side, there's not a side specific one for this. So it is just simply putting them on. Some brakes definitely have side specific. Some of them do not. So just like that, and then we'll go ahead and hit it up with some caliper grease, just like so. Remember again not to get it on anything, and then while we're waiting, actually let's go ahead and spin it one more time, and that should be pretty much all we need. We'll go ahead and hit up the bolts and put some grease on those as well. That lubrication really does kind of just help keep everything moving smooth, especially down in here. Gonna do one more rotation. That should be all we need. We'll go ahead and back it off. Go ahead and remove that. Go ahead and flip this the way it's supposed to go. And remember, you got to press in on these little slide pins. Try not to get your glove caught like I just did. And you're just going to tighten it down finger tight. And the bottom one we might want to do just a touch more than the top, because if you remember on the other side, we did have some difficulty due to where they put the brake line. So I'm probably going to tighten that one down a little bit more than the other side, but that's starting to look really good there. And we'll go ahead and take that 14 millimeter. Same thing, 20 foot-pounds of torque. Just like that, it clicked, you're good. 20 foot-pounds does not seem like a lot, and it's really not, but you do want to make sure you're up to spec on that. Okay, that's 20 foot-pounds as well. Gonna go ahead and pop open this cap, and we're gonna go ahead and bleed this brake. Some of these caps are not user-friendly, so go ahead and use a flathead and just begin to pry up. And we'll go ahead and get back out that 8mm, just like so. And then we'll go ahead and put the bottle right there. And we'll go ahead and get that other person to help you out and bleed this brake. So when that person says they're holding, that is when you're going to break it open. Go ahead when you're ready.
1, 2, 3, and hold.
Okay, you could see the air bubbles in that one. Okay, go ahead and do it again.
1, 2, 3, and hold.
And that one had no air bubbles, so we're good. Because this is a newer brake system, you're probably not gonna have near as, you're good. We're not gonna have near as many air bubbles, and so that's a good thing though. You can go ahead and put your towel here just to make sure we try to catch as much of that as possible. The angle on this makes it hard for it not to kind of go everywhere, but that's why we have everything like we do set up, so we're not gonna spill all over everything. And you can go ahead, clean that up. I do always like to make sure it's nice and tight. Don't overdo this. You can definitely break it, but you can kind of sense what feels like it's tight. And just like that, you're back on there. We're gonna go ahead and spray it down one more time, just to make sure we didn't do anything with that brake clean. Didn't get anything where it's not supposed to. And also you want to look at your rotor. This rotor looks great as well. So I'm gonna let that dry for a minute, get everything kind of cleaned up in this area. Then we'll go ahead and put back on the tire. So now that tire is back on, you can go ahead and by hand put these on. So those are all on by hand. Remember, we're not gonna crank this all the way down to spec. We're just gonna get them nice and on there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pull out this, and then we're gonna go ahead and raise it up, and then pull out the jacks, and then tighten it down to spec. So go ahead and jack this back up. We got to get it off of the jack stands. And you can kind of see it and feel it move a little bit off of the jack stands and the weight distribution back onto this. And then we'll go ahead and pull these. Just like so. We're just going to move them up here, and we'll use it for the front if that's what you're going to do as well with us. Same thing with this one. Move it back up here. Do make sure your chuck is still there. We'll go ahead and lower this down now. Just twist that to the right. Left, I'm sorry. Twist that to the left. And then we're gonna go ahead and tighten it down to spec. It says 94, but I just have 100 torque, so it's gonna be good enough. Do it in a star pattern. I hope this was helpful if you wanted to get your back brakes done. Please comment if you do have any questions. Thank you guys so much for watching.